everybody, and happy Friday. So we've just had the new moon in Virgo a few days ago, and yeah, that really was a catalyst for me, taking me through quite a deep descent. So I trust that since we're all interconnected, that the insights that I gleaned for myself will probably resonate with a lot of you. So today's theme is love is letting go. And whilst immediately you might think that that's about letting go of emotional attachments or situations that no longer serve, to honor ourselves or to honor the free will of another, today I'll be speaking more about letting go of outcomes. Yeah. So things are really intensifying in our collective rebirth of consciousness. And I've been saying for some time, that we're in the transition phase. And the lesson of the transition phase in a labor, birthing a biological child, is to let go and let God, is to allow radical trust in the unseen, the unknowable, which the Native Americans called great mystery. Now, some of you might have sniggered when I alluded to the fact that in the last week's episode that I'd been pooing like a sheep. Not something I usually share with my public audience, but I don't have much of a filter. I think I'm probably on the spectrum, aren't we all? But yeah, it was quite a journey because I don't normally get constipated, but I do have 5 planets in Scorpio. Scorpio rules the bowels. So my bowels were part of my big initiation this week. And it seemed that I was holding on, even physically, at a time when I knew intuitively I was needing to really let go. So all year I'd been saying, after I deliver this stage show Yantra at the Edinburgh Fringe, which I did the beginning of August, that I had no plans. I was completely in the void. And so what happened was my solar plexus, so that energy center located between your belly and your heart, which governs the rational self, the lower mind, the mental body. It's yellow, it's like the inner sun, and it governs the liver, the gallbladder, the kidneys, the spleen, and the stomach. So our ability to digest our experiences, particularly the bitter experiences. And this pain, I had it like colicky, cramping pain for about 5 days. And the other day it got really intense, and it went on for hours, and I got scared. I thought, oh God, have I got gallstones or kidney stones? Like, this is scary pain. Okay. And so in my pain, in my fear, in my contraction, literally in my physicality, I wanted to reach out to an external authority for reassurance. So I said to my dear friend who I'm staying with, did he have any doctors he could recommend? And his family doctor, who had seen, his entire family for generations, in his 70s, who lives over the road, he got in contact with him, and but he wasn't available. So I got in the bath, and I put Epsom salts, and I put on some exquisite music. This wonderful priestess woman called Chantress Seba. I'll share a link to her 1 hour chant of Omna Mana. Oh God, I blanked in the moment. Ganesha's chant to remove obstacles. And yeah, I'd already journeyed in Edinburgh with this and released a lot of grief. And when I did that, the laryngitis that I had then subsided. So this was like the next installment. And I was reminded that, we're all our own healers, of course. So what I needed to do was to simply show up in my full presence and hold space for the archetype that governs the solar plexus, which is Athena. And Athena needed to grieve all of her plans that had not come to pass, in the timeline or in the way that she had expected or hoped. And this manifested as kriyas, so kundalini spasms of energy that originated from my solar plexus chakra and were so intense that I was taken into circular breathing like you would in holotropic breath work. And on each out breath, intense grief was coming up. Not that I knew what the belief or the story was that was attached to each wave of emotion, I just had to ride it. And so, I entered into a light trance state as I journeyed this grief. And, you know, for about 6 weeks, every time I stepped outside, I couldn't go more than 100 steps without seeing somebody wearing a skull. It was like death. Everywhere I turned was beckoning me. And those of you that have followed me for a while may remember that my life path in the Kabbalistic tree is death. And if you want to know how to find out what your life path is in the Kabbalah, which is the mystic tradition of, the Middle Eastern people, not to be confused with Sufism, you simply put the 22 cards of the major arcana in the tarot onto the 22 paths in the Kabbalistic tree of life. And for me, my numerology is 24. So when I put an addition sign between each digit of my birth date, the 5th of the 11th, 1970, it adds up to 24. So 24, you then add the 2 and the 4 and you get 6, and that's your numerological life path, or mine in this instance. So you look that up on the tree and it gives you, what the tarot lesson is of that. Anyway, for me, it's death. So, I was being put through a major initiation, and, everything coincides to support that. So Pluto, which has gone retrograde back into the final degree of Capricorn, is just 2 degrees off my natal moon. So I've got Pluto conjunct my emotional self, my psyche, my soul at the moment, and it's been going backwards and forwards since 2021. Actually, no, 2020. So those of you that have anything in the final degrees of Capricorn, Pluto is, I dare say, initiating you, taking you down to the underworld to look at and integrate your shadow, the parts of you that are wounded, that are uncomfortable, that are perhaps disowned and needs to be consciously integrated. So I felt to share with you just an excerpt from my diary, from my journal that I wrote when I was recording what had happened that day. And I felt like I was in a trance state all day. And I'd made a commitment. I'd made some pumpkin dal that I was going to bring some down to a sister who was working at the health food store. We were doing like a recipe swap, and she'd already delivered her pesto, so I had to go out. But I kept listening to this chanting and beautiful hang drum to keep myself in that meditative state. And when I saw her, she said she was also in a trance state. So I figured many of you were too on Tuesday. And incidentally, this was also when Uranus was stationary. So a lot of us, I think I spoke to or heard of 10 other people that were experiencing acute insomnia, since Uranus, is the planetary sphere that governs Kundalini. It governs Aquarius, which is an air sign. So, the busy mind, Vata in Ayurvedic medicine. So many of us were awoken and kept awake with the electrical body, the Kundalini, the bio energy of the body, the light body, electrified and unable to wind down. So this should pass within a week, because sort of a week either side of that time when it's stationary, which amplifies the impact of that planetary sphere. So I've made the note, this is the death that has been beckoning me. Some of you may relate. In every skull image that has greeted me every time I've stepped out the door, the relinquishing of my best laid plans. This is the preparation for my initiation in Egypt. So a dear sister has kindly offered to sponsor my pilgrimage for 10 days over the equinox that's coming up in September to Egypt, embodying the Nile goddess. So I saw this image of me when I was in the bath of, some of you may know the famous statuette that they dug up of the Nile goddess, where it's a woman with her arms outstretched in a V shape to the heavens. And this is said to be the power pose of the feminine. So there being no power, greater power than surrendering to the unknowable, to infinite loving wisdom, to the quantum field. And then I saw myself floating in the Nile. This is a woman who is completely surrendered to the divine as the living vessel, going wherever the current takes me. I was guided then to lay naked in the sun to balance this rite by water. So I was pretty wrinkly. I'd been in the bath for an hour. And I placed a light and a dark sheepskin down on the decking. Fortunately, the sight lines were pretty good in terms of privacy from the neighbours. And I lay naked on the sheepskin in the sunshine, again with this chanting music continuing. And it was 1111 frequency. And so in that unity consciousness of oneness, that vibration. And I was guided to just bring the soles of my feet so they were together, and drawing up my knees with my lying on my back. And for me, and with my arms up like this, for me, that's the position I get taken into when I'm doing holotropic breath work. And it reminds me of the scarab, which in Egyptian symbolism represents death and rebirth. Well, the death, the frog, which looks like an embryo, represents rebirth. And then more tears came, but this time waves of gratitude at being the vessel, having the opportunity to be filled with spirit. And the message that I'd had 2 days previous was that what we were being guided to do for this new moon was to empty everything, so that we could be empty to receive. Only when the cup is empty are we available to receiving divine providence, what great mystery has in store for us, rather than getting in the way and obstructing it with our own lower selves' plans. And I saw clouds passing overhead that looked like winged figures, like the goddess Isis with big wings, and another that looked like Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent. As tempted as I was to capture it with my phone to share it with you, I knew I had to just stay present in the experience. And I then nestled into this soft fur and extended my arms and legs, and I literally danced with the clouds as a sky dancer, which was the ancient term for a tantrika. And it took me back to a somatic memory as a baby. My happiest as a baby was lying naked in the sunshine on sheepskin. So there was a beautiful sense of returning to a state of innocence, in complete trust, complete dissolution of all separation with existence, with the divine. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. And then I drew this very childlike image of somebody who has the sacred flame within the womb, but also within the third eye and extending out through the wings. And yeah, feels auspicious, this trip to Egypt. And I wanted to also look up in Jamie Sam's medicine, interesting, medicine cards, Swan, because I'd also been seeing Swan a lot. And, you know, I wanted to share with you just a bit of the story from the Native American tradition of the dream time. And it goes, little Swan flew through the dream time looking for the future. She rested for a moment in the coolness of the pond, looking for a way to find the entry point to the future. This was a moment of confusion for Swan because she knew that she'd happened into the dream time by accident. This was her first flight alone and she was a bit concerned. As she looked high above Sacred Mountain, she saw this big swirling black hole, the biggest black hole she'd ever seen. Dragonfly came flying by, and Swan stopped Dragonfly to ask them about the black hole. Dragonfly said, "Swan, that is the doorway to the other planes of imagination. I have been guardian of the illusion for many moons. If you want to enter there, you would have to ask permission and earn the right." And this reminds me of our upcoming shift into the portal that is the Rainbow Bridge, or the twilight zone, the null zone, into the photon belt. And to do that, we have to have surrendered to the heart, to the will of the heart, following our conscience, because that's where Spirit speaks to us, doing what it is our heart is willing us to do, not our mind. And that's all we need to do to earn the right to go through the shift into the upper dimensional planes of existence with Gaia when the time comes. And if you want to know more about that, you can watch on my website. There's a video masterclass called Shift into the Light, which is dedicated to preparing us, our consciousness, for the shift into the photon belt. Back to the story. Swan was not so sure she wanted to enter the black hole. She asked Dragonfly what was necessary for her to earn entry. Dragonfly replied, "You must be willing to accept whatever the future holds as it is presented." So you must accept what is, not fight it, which is what the ego does. It's like, no, I thought this was going to happen. You must be willing to accept whatever the future holds as it is presented without trying to change Great Spirit's plan. Swan looked at her ugly little duckling body and answered, "I will be happy to abide by Great Spirit's plan. I won't fight the currents of the black hole. I will surrender to the flow of the spiral and trust what I'm shown." Dragonfly was very happy with Swan's answer and began to spin the magic to break the pond's illusion. Suddenly, Swan was engulfed by a whirlpool in the centre of the pond. Swan reappeared many days later, but now she was graceful and white and long-necked. Dragonfly was stunned. "Swan, what happened to you?" he exclaimed. Swan smiled and said, "Dragonfly, I learned to surrender my body to the power of Great Spirit, and I was taken to where the future lives." So, yeah, I also finished reading a book this week called Tantric Quest. And in this book, it's about a man who seeks initiation with a tantrika. And she makes the point that before he can be united with the goddess in the alchemical marriage, the great rite of sacred union, he must face all his fears. And so there's not one set array of initiations. It'll look different for every person depending on what their specific greatest fears are. And this was the theme of my show Yantra, which I realise now may have been only just for me to face my fear of stage fright, or my fear of, investing all that I have and letting go of what has been my identity, my previous way of serving, to step completely into the unknown. And so now whilst leading up to Yantra, I was doing a morning meditation, visualizing what it was that I was wanting to create. Now my morning manifestation is simply align me with the path of my highest destiny. And I have a new affirmation, which is what is for me finds me, so that I am completely in the receptive, in the feminine, magnetizing that which is completely aligned, but not needing to know what it is before it shows up, but trusting what crosses my path is for me. And swan medicine, Sarasvati in the Tantric or the Hindu yogic tradition, she is the goddess who embodies creativity. She is the muse, but she is the one who embodies white Tantra, union within. And I speak about this in my first Sacred Union book. And in the Celtic tradition of the Grail, the Lady of the Lake, the Lady of Avalon, her boat is shaped like a swan, again representing this state of grace, which is the mature feminine. So, this new moon in Virgo, Virgo being an earth sign, the sign of the priestess, it feels like what we've been put through is an initiation, particularly playing it out in the body, since it's an earth sign, to let go of all that stands between us and our highest destiny, our highest trajectory for the future. So, for those of you like me that have a moon or perhaps other planets in the final degrees of Capricorn, it might be a very intense initiation with Pluto conjunct whatever planetary sphere is there. And that will end on November 19, when Pluto shifts into Aquarius, the sign of the future, the sign of the 2000-year astrological age that we're moving into, when our planet completely shifts into the photon belt. So our sun is there. Our sun moved into the photon belt in 2012. Our solar system is in the photon belt, but our planet Earth is not yet. And you won't miss it, okay? You will know for sure when we're in it. But things are hotting up. So, I felt when I had the visions for Yantra, and I had visions of Egypt just before the vision for Yantra came through of me naked with a big pair of wings, which is the finale of the show, that I was being called to Egypt. So watch this space. I am aware that I'm not allowed to do live social media videos in Egypt, that there are tight controls, but I will share what I can from the initiation that I'm being put through. Maybe not at the time, maybe retrospectively. It's been a long video. Thanks so much for your patience, and thanks for watching, and also understanding that I needed to take time out from social media to deliver that show and also recuperate. Blessings wherever you are, and thanks so much for witnessing my transformation, and may it help as a reflection of yours. Ciao for now. Oh, you have my blessing to share this if it resonates.